Today we are celebrating Pushabhishek, our annual flower festival. So the brahmacharis have selected this particular verse. To give us a deeper sense of the profound form of meditation that you are all immersed in at this very moment. What seems to be something very ordinary, plucking flowers, the petals, anyone can do it. You don't have to have studied 12 years of Sanskrit grammar. Male or female, Indian, Australian, American, Russian, African, educated or uneducated, from one caste or another, everyone is united together. There's no high or low. But yet, if it is done with the spirit of devotion, it has the most powerful effect of cleansing our heart and uplifting us to the spiritual platform. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells, Patram pushpam palam toyam yomi bhakta prayachchati. If one offers me with love and devotion, even a fruit, a flower, a leaf, or some water, I will accept it. Krishna is saragrahi. That means he accepts the essence of the feeling of the heart, of our intention. Whether it is something very grand or something as simple as this. Krishna's Bhakta Vatsal. He agrees to be purchased, conquered by the love of his devotee. And being Lakshminath, the husband of the goddess of fortune, Krishna does not need anything. He is in no need of food. He's in no need of flower petals. He's in no need of any types of wealth or palaces or jewels. In fact, if these things are offered to him without proper humility and devotion, he will not even look in that direction. May I tell a few? May take some time, but nobody looks tired today. We'll begin with Mahabharata. The Pandavas had just been exiled to the forest for 12 years. Despite so many attempts to humiliate them, to kill them, to increase their exile for another 12 years, by every type of unfair means, Duryodhana was not successful. The Pandavas returned and simply wanted what was theirs back. They were meant to be the rulers of the whole world. But Duryodhana convinced his father, Dhritarashtra, to banish them and usurp everything that belonged to them. Yudhisthira was so kind. He sent a message to Duryodhana. Just give us 5 villages and we'll be happy. Duryodhana rejected even that. And because of that, Duryodhana was mobilizing forces for an entire war. And the Pandavas had no choice but to respond. The armies were assembling. But Yudhisthira, so kind and gentle, he didn't want this war. Krishna did not want this war. Yudhisthira approached Krishna, who is the supreme absolute truth, who had incarnated within this world, but who was playing in such a sweet way that he accepted the role of like a younger brother, being the cousin of Yudhisthira. And he was always eager to help and serve his devotees. Yudhisthira Maharaj was very impassioned. This war will be horrible. We have to avoid it. We have to make sense, somehow or other give sense to Duryodhana. We have all tried. Everyone has tried. Krishna, you're the last hope. You're the only possibility that he may listen to you. Ask him to be a little fair for the sake of Dharma, for the sake of so many lives. Go to Hastinapur and give him this message. Krishna became the messenger of his devotee. He spoke, he's the speaker of the Vedas, the highest truths, and yet he humbles himself to be the messenger for his devotee, and later to be the charioteer for his devotee. So when Krishna was on his way to Hastinapur to offer this message of peace, the spies of Duryodhana found out that he was coming. And Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra, first of all, the father of Duryodhana, who was blind, who was actually the king at the time, he was very excited Krishna was coming. He said, let us make grand arrangements to welcome him. And they were arranging to offer him a magnificent throne to sit on, music and dance, and the most precious of all jewels and silks. And they were arranging to give him a magnificent feast. And Duryodhana was very excited about this too. When Vidura heard about it, he said, you cannot win over Krishna by your gifts. Their motivation is by giving him all these gifts, he would abandon the Pandavas and join their side. That was their motivation. They were trying to bribe God for their own selfish purposes. And just see how the mentality, the whole world is a mirror of your own consciousness. Because Duryodhana was so much thinking about himself and what he could gain, he was thinking everybody must be like that. Even God, even Krishna. Everyone has their price. We'll give him such wonderful feast, we'll give him such loving hospitality. We'll give him the most beautiful jewels in the entire world. We'll give him everything. And he'll join our side. And then the Pandavas are finished without Krishna. Vidura said, Krishna doesn't need anything you say. He will be angry as fire if you try to bribe him like this. Meanwhile, Lord Krishna came and he refused to take the food that Duryodhana prepared for him, or any of the entertainment, or everything else. And Duryodhana arranged the most beautiful palatial suite for Krishna to stay in while he was there. Krishna made it clear he will be living and eating at the very simple house of Vidura, who had a pure heart. When they welcomed Krishna, they had the most magnificent throne anyone has ever seen, inlaid with jewels. There was diamonds and rubies and emeralds and sapphires, and it was inlaid with ivory and gold and silver. Krishna sat on it. And Duryodhana, first thing he said, we are offering you such wonderful hospitality. Why? Why, Krishna, are you rejecting it? It is not right. Chastise. We have offered you this magnificent feast. Why you are not eating? Why you are going to Vidura's house? Krishna said, I have come for business, not for eating. I will eat after my business. I have to give a message. Duryodhana said, that is not right. When hospitality is offered, it should be accepted. Krishna said, let me be honest with you. The Pandavas are your own cousins. They've always been fair to you, they love you, and they are my devotees. They represent Dharma. And because you hate them, because you've cheated them, because you've tried to kill them, you are my enemy. I will not eat the food of my enemy. Now this is very interesting, because in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells that no one is my enemy. I am equal to all. I am not partial. Samoham sarva bhuteshu. Every living being. So why it appears that Krishna is partial to the Pandavas? Krishna gives everyone. He's equal to everyone in the sense he's everyone's well-wisher. But according to how we use our free will, Krishna reciprocates accordingly. If we become the enemies of Krishna's devotees, then by our free will, Krishna responds and becomes our enemy. Well, what kind of enemy? He's only speaking with the most intimate, sweet love for his enemies, to help them, to give them liberation, to give them the highest ecstasies of pure love of God. He's just teaching them what's good for them. He has no malice toward anyone. He's speaking what's good for Duryodhana. And then Krishna got up and left. They went to Duryodhana's house, simple home, where he was offered very simple food. According to legend, they weren't prepared for him and they just had a banana ready and they gave him a banana. And Krishna was happy eating a banana. that was offered with love and devotion, then that magnificent feast of hundreds of preparations cooked by the finest chefs, served in golden plates. Krishna is only pleased by our devotion. Vidura told Krishna, please, you shouldn't have come to Hastinapur. They will not listen to you. They may insult you. They may do something very, very crazy. Don't go. Why are you going to speak to Duryodhana? Why are you going to see Dhritarashtra, who is under the control of his envious son? They will not listen. It will be futile. Krishna said, I know that when somebody is so envious, they can't hear a good reason. But still, it is my duty to give everyone a chance. It is my duty to speak the truth, because still they have their free will. And let the world know that if there has to be the war, all the blame must be on Duryodhana, because Yudhisthira has tried everything humanly possible to stop this war, and so have I. The next morning, Krishna went to the court, and all the greatest kings and rulers and princes were there. Dhritarashtra was sitting on his throne. Duryodhana had his magnificent throne, and they gave Krishna the most magnificent throne. Krishna looked at Dhritarashtra. You will have on one side of you Bhishma, Drona, Ashvatthama, Radheya, Dushasana. And on the other side of you, you will have Yudhisthira, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, Sahadev, Drishtajumna. You will have everyone. I can tell you, and you know this in the core of your heart, that Yudhisthira Maharaj, he is so pure and selfless that he will be absolutely grateful to accept you as his king and to serve you and to lay down his life for you as the king. Everyone will love you. But if you don't, there will be mass bloodshed, disgrace. Do the right thing. It's all in your hands, Krishna told Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra was physically blind. He replied, Krishna, I know that everything you're saying is true. And I know that your mission here is one of compassion for our own benefit. But I'm helpless. Duryodhana, I've tried to explain this to him. His mother has tried to explain this to him. Vidura and Bhishma, but he won't listen. He's bent on the ruination of our whole dynasty. Please, Krishna, no use speaking to me. Speak to my son, Duryodhana. Maybe you could make sense to him. Krishna turned to Duryodhana with compassion, with love. And he praised him as being the son of such a great heritage. Just be fair to the Pandavas. They will serve with you as brothers. Yudhisthira Maharaj will immediately forgive and forget all the injustices you've done to him. Just give them a little land. That's all they want. Duryodhana became furious, hearing the words of Krishna. He said, Krishna, why are you bewildering everyone? Why are you speaking these lies? What nonsense! You're trying to make me the blame for this war. I am the upholder of Dharma. I will not budge from Dharma, and you are trying to make me something else? You're spreading this lying propaganda against me? This war is the Pandavas' fault, not my fault. You're saying I took everything away from them? The fact is they lost their kingdom in that dice match. Duryodhana chose to be in that dice match. He lost everything. Now it is all mine. And you want me to give it back to him? That would be a dharma for me to give back something that they have lost. Don't put the blame on me. I will not budge from Dharma for anything. I will not bend my head for your irreligious purposes for any situation. I would rather lay down my life on the battlefield and die and be the food for vultures than to do what you're saying. Because you're representing irreligion. Krishna was very displeased by Duryodhana's words. Duryodhana, you are speaking like a madman? You're talking about Dharma? You challenged Yudhisthira to that dice match knowing that as a Kshatriya he could not refuse a challenge. He had to do it. And you had Shakuni with loaded dice, who had the mystic power where there was no possibility for anything to happen but you to win. You cheated. And you talk about Dharma? All the times you tried to poison Bhima by presenting him nice cakes for his birthday which had bitter poison in them. And how you sent the Pandavas and their helpless mother Kunti to Varnavata and put them in a beautiful house that was made out of flammable lac. And then you lit it on fire to burn them to death. And you talk about Dharma, you talk about fairness. And you had Draupadi, their wife, dragged by the hair into an assembly. And you tried to, and with horrible, nasty, blasphemous words, which cut her heart like razor blades, you tried to strip her naked and humiliate her. And while they were in the forest, all the lies you spread against them, and how you sent people to try to murder them, to kill them, and you're talking about Dharma? But still, Yudhisthira is willing to be your friend, to love you, to forget everything that's happened, to forgive you and work with you. Give him a little land. Duryodhana said, I will not give them enough land to pierce the head of a needle through. When Duryodhana heard Krishna's words, he stood up in anger. He lifted his head up and walked out. He said, I will not be insulted by these lies. And he, with his head up, in total arrogance, he walked right by Krishna and Bhishma and out of the assembly. and all of his brothers, and all the kings who supported him, they all walked behind him. And practically the whole assembly room was emptied. Bhishma, Drona, they were all trying to convince Duryodhana. They were all trying to convince Dhritarashtra, give up this nonsense son of yours. Dhritarashtra was so pained to see what happened. He said, I could see that my whole dynasty is finished. My son has offended Krishna in this way. And my poor wife, Gandhari, how she will suffer when all her children are dead. I think the only hope is for my wife, Gandhari, Duryodhana's mother, to try to convince him. So they called for Gandhari. And then the message was sent to Duryodhana, a message he could not refuse. Your mother is calling for you. Duryodhana returned. Gandhari was pleading. She was such a soft-hearted, virtuous lady. That I gave birth to you. You were born from my womb. I love you more than anything. Why don't you listen to me? Yudhisthira and the Pandavas are good people. They represent the highest principles of purity and fairness. Why are you doing this to me? Do you want me and your father to live the rest of our lives in the misery of having seen all of our sons dead? No one will be our friends. We will be alone. And what about everyone else? Give the Pandavas their land. They love you. I love you. Bhishma was talking. Drona, everybody was trying to convince Duryodhana. And then Duryodhana and Dushasana began to speak right in front of Krishna and everyone. That Krishna, by his lying propaganda, he's turning everyone against us. He's turning our father and our mother and everyone. I know his plan. His plan is to convince everyone to make me a prisoner and hand me over to Maharaj Yudhisthira. But he will not gain the fulfillment of his wishes. Today, we will tie up Krishna with ropes and make him our prisoner. And then the Pandavas are finished and no one can do anything to us. This was their plan. Dhritarashtra said, don't speak this insanity. You want to tie up Krishna and make him your prisoner. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You can't do this. You're insane. And Vidura was telling Krishna, please leave here before this humiliation. They're going to attack you. Krishna said, let us see what they can do to me. There was panic in the hall. Bhishma was outraged. Drona was outraged. And little by little, not little by little, rapidly, more and more soldiers of Duryodhana entered into the assembly, all hell-bent on arresting Krishna, tying him up, and put him in prison. As they approached, Krishna laughed. It was a laugh nobody ever heard of Krishna. They saw Krishna with angry eyes. They saw Krishna speak, but they never heard him laugh like this. It was a laugh of both sorrow and anger. Anger that Duryodhana was so envious. And he was going to cause so much death and suffering and sorrow. Because Krishna loved Duryodhana as he loves every living being. Aham bija pratapitai. Krishna is the father and mother of everyone. And as the soldiers came to arrest Krishna, Krishna manifested a form that began to shine like the sun. It grew in size. It had many arms. Within that form that covered all directions were the devatas and all the... It was the universal form, the Virat Rupa. It was a magnificent form. The form of the Almighty. And although Dhritarashtra was born blind, by Krishna's grace, for the first time in his life, Dhritarashtra could see. He looked upon the universal form of Krishna, so absolutely beautiful, shining like the sun, with many hands holding many, many weapons. It was not only was it so sweet and beautiful, but it showed the unlimited power of God. Dhritarashtra, looking at this form, was in ecstasy. And he told Krishna, I have seen your form now. It's the only thing I ever want to see again. Now please close my eyes again and make me blind, for I never has to think about, I've known that I've never seen anything in my life, and I'll never see anything else in my life except you. The soldiers ran away, or they stood back. And Krishna manifested his ordinary form again and walked out of the assembly. So this story is very philosophically represents the relationship between the jiva, or the soul, and God. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. Krishna tells in Gita, I come to this world. I descend again and again and again. In so many avatars, prophets, incarnations. For what reason? To give us the same message that Krishna gave Duryodhana, essentially. Don't misuse your independence. Just act in harmony with Dharma. Act in devotion. I'm your father, I'm your mother. The whole spiritual world is yours. But still, because of our unwillingness to listen, the Lord still never gives up. He comes again and again and again and again and again to keep reminding us and warning us about the consequences of giving up our own inherited spiritual nature. So yes, although Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra were ruling as kings and they were offering Krishna the best best, most opulent things in the entire kingdom, Krishna wouldn't even look at it. All he wants is our love. All he wants is for us to love each other. That's what he was saying. You are all brothers, sisters, cousins. I just want you to love each other. That will be my greatest happiness. And that's always Krishna's message. We are all related. Every living entity, not only all varieties of human life, but all species of life. We're all the same family. Brothers, sisters, cousins. Krishna wants us to love each other, to cooperate with each other, to not be envious and greedy and exploit each other and hurt each other. That was his message to Duryodhana. That's his message to all of us. And to experience the essence of real happiness, the treasures of the soul, it's so easy. Whoever we are. If we have this consciousness of humility and generosity and devotion, any one of these flower petals that you're plucking today, any single one of them, if you do it with this consciousness, you will attain the highest perfection of life. That's how gracious God is. We read in the Srimad Bhagavatam 8th canto about Gajendra. He was an elephant. And Gajendra, with his whole family, he was the king of the jungles. He went on a nice holiday excursion. They came upon a very beautiful lake filled with lotus flowers. The whole lake was fragrant because the pollen of the lotus flowers were falling in the water, and the water became like nectar. And it was a very nice cooling temperature. Gajendra went into the water. Oh, it was just so pleasurable to his body. And he wanted to share it with his wife and children, so with his trunk he was magnanimously spraying them with the water, the fragrant, nectarine, cooling waters of this lake. But the nature of this world is whoever you are, wherever you are, padam padam yad vipadam natesham. There could be dangers at every step. As he was at the peak of enjoying the nicest environment, suddenly a crocodile bit his leg. And there was a great battle between him and the crocodile. The crocodile was trying to pull him in the water. He was trying to pull the crocodile, and it was going back and forth for a long time. And he looked at his relatives. They couldn't help him. And all of his strength couldn't help him, because the crocodile being in water was stronger. It wasn't his place to be in water. So finally, when he was on the verge of death, he remembered his past life, where he was a king and he was a devotee. And he remembered the Supreme Lord. He forgot him his entire life as an elephant, but at this most critical juncture, the darkest moment of his life, he remembered the Lord. And with his trunk, he plucked a single lotus flower and raised it up toward the sky. And with tears of love and affection in his eyes, he offered a beautiful prayer. It was a prayer of surrender. He was not praying, Lord, save me from death. He was not praying, Lord, save me from pain. Through that flower, he was offering the Lord his heart and his life. Do anything you want with me. I am yours. And from that one gesture of just offering one little flower with love and devotion, the Supreme Lord incarnated. He descended from the spiritual world to the scene of that place and immediately rescued Gajendra. He cut the mouth of the crocodile off. And seeing that Gajendra really, all he wanted was the loving service of the Lord immediately sent him. First, he manifested Gajendra's original pure spiritual form from the spiritual world, his Siddhadeva. And then he sent him to Vaikuntha. Here is a person who wasted his whole life spiritually with no consciousness of God whatsoever, but in just a few seconds, he just offered a flower with genuine love and devotion. And within minutes, he was promoted to the spiritual world. Patram pushpam palam toyam. In Ram Lila, the story of Shabari, when Ram and Lakshman were looking for Sita, they were wandering through the forests. Kabanda, the least expected person to give good advice, told Ram and Lakshman, go to Pampa Sarovar. It's a beautiful lake. And close by is Sugriva and his friend Hanuman. Make allies with them. They will help you find Sita. So Ram and Lakshman came to Pampa Sarovar. And there living, there was a little thatched hut and also a cave, was a very old, emaciated woman, dressed in rough tree bark. Her name Shabari. And as far as caste, she was like from the jungles. She was considered an outcast from that designation. She was there waiting, year after year after year, for Ram to come. When Ram arrived, Shabari, she bowed down. All she had to offer him was a little grass seat she made for him, a little grass mat. And Ram and Lakshman sat. And she explained to Lord Ramchandra about her life. She was a disciple of Matanga Rishi. And Matanga Rishi went back to the spiritual world with all his disciples, but he told Shabari, you're not prepared to go. You remain here. Because years to come, Lord Ramchandra, God who will appear on earth, will come to this place. And you serve him with love and devotion. And you will attain perfection, and then you will join all of us in the spiritual world. Shabari day and night was just waiting for Ram in separation. And when he came, she wanted to offer him the best she had. But what did she have? She was living in a jungle. There was a particular type of berry. It's a very small fruit that grew wild there. But the problem with that fruit is whether it was ripe or unripe, it looked exactly the same. Now some people are very expert at knowing how to judge what is a ripe fruit and what isn't. My mother was very expert at that. When I was a little boy and she would go shopping, sometimes she would take me with her, and she would go to the fruits, and just by looking at them and touching them, she could tell exactly what state they were in. And I was so bored watching. If there's anything a little boy can't tolerate, it's watching their mother testing fruits in a grocery store. So I would usually run away. But even the best fruit tester could not tell the difference between these particular berries. So Shabari, she's sitting on the ground in the jungle. Ram's on a little grass mat, and she's taking the fruit, and she's taking a slight little bite out of each berry and tasting. And if it was sweet, she would take it out of her mouth and give it to Ram. And if it was bitter, she would throw it off to the side. She would probably eat them later, I don't know. Now, according to the principles of making offerings to the Supreme Lord, this is extremely offensive. According to the Vedic scriptures, when we cook offerings to God, we should be in the mood that it's completely for His satisfaction. Unless we're specifically preparing it, we shouldn't even be looking at the food. We shouldn't be enjoying the smells, and we should definitely not taste it. The Lord should taste it first, and then we accept His remnants. But here, she's eating them and taking them out of mouth. But Lord Ram was unlimitedly happy. Because although she was very simple and uneducated in the rules and regulations of proper ritual, she was doing it with simple-hearted love and devotion. The Lord was happier eating the saliva decorated fruits of Shabari than even someone who, like Duryodhana, preparing nice gourmet feast. All the rules and all the regulations are simply meant for the purpose of developing this simple-hearted love and devotion that she already had. Ram ate the fruits, accepted her love, and then Ram told Shabari, now, you are mine. Go back to the spiritual world. And on that very day, her original spirit, by her own mystic power, she ignited the fire element in her body, and a beautiful spiritual form emerged, and she went back to the spiritual world. Why? Because she offered a little fruit to the Lord with love and devotion.